to abandon ship.
Oh no!
Here we go.
Can I persuade you to join us for a drink? It's a tradition.
Here, here.
Jar Jar, homie, my main man, quickly. Before the Separatists attack, get into the escape pod.
Hey! This is escape, then we're the pod.
Welcome back to Star Wars Escape Pod and another bantering episode here with your favorite co-hosts and guests and everyone here at Star Wars Escape Pod that you might like. So we got Blake and possibly Darian popping in the show as well. And as you know, you probably guessed it from the title already. We're going to be talking about some Star Wars books, and not just any particular book. We're going to be talking about the last 5 years and just the strategy, the elements involved in making a multimedia universe like Star Wars, and so many other things. The success of some of the projects that have come out of such strategies, the public opinions on some of these books, as well as general rankings of some of the stuff that came prior. So much stuff packed in. So let's get the ball rolling here, shall we?
Another happy landing.
All right. You know, it's very, very rare that we start a show off with the main theme, but I feel like,
I don't know, have we ever, or has it been like years?
dude, I don't know what it is about the main theme, but it always gives me so much joy when I hear it, you know?
Yeah, it's like the adventure's about to begin.
Yeah, and I feel like, okay, can you believe it's been 5 years
Why is this not our alarm every morning? It's the start of the day, right, you know?
That's a good point. Okay, just imagine yourself sleeping, right?
Okay.
All right, and then...
Man, I've never been a morning person, but maybe I can be.
Hell yeah, time for eggs and bacon, yo!
That's right.
Yeah, pancakes.
Well, I feel like it's probably closer to A New Hope, because all of this is like super fancy and exciting music, and then it pans into life, and you're just Luke on a farm harvesting water. He's kind of like go back to reality.
Yeah, gotta have those waffles. All right, so we have it's just us for now, but we have some big stuff to chat about, and it's more just like a chill kind of week. And we did one of these, a bit more sort of unscripted chill chat last week with Bryce. So if anyone hasn't caught up with that, that was a fun chat with catching up with Bryce, because it's been a little while since we've had him on the show.
It's been a while since we had him on, so it's nice just to hang out and kind of catch up.
Yeah,
it's always a good conversation,
Oh yeah, for sure. And that's one of the reasons that we started a Star Wars podcast, right?
Yeah, to be honest, I kind of thought we'd do it more.
Yeah.
Instead of, there's just been so much coming out all the time. We haven't had just chill episodes.
It's been a blessed thing in a way, because we don't need to really plan anything. We always just, we hit the ground running with whatever's current and whatever's happening, whatever's coming out. And we've been lucky to have so much stuff come out on Disney Plus and this and that. But
it's weird though. There's been so much so quickly that I've drastically cut down on my rewatchability of stuff.
Yeah. No, and at least for me, it's easy to forget, why, or at least what started this. It's just the interest in having an unplanned conversation about Star Wars, and it can be a little nerve wracking sitting down doing a podcast about nothing. But Seinfeld did it for 10 years. So
And they're all very wealthy now.
Yeah, so
Especially Jerry.
heck, why not us? But it's not to say that we shouldn't go in with a bit of a inkling as to kind of how we'd construct the conversation.
For
this
the
week.
record, we have a conversation to talk about. We're not just doing this on the fly.
Yeah, exactly. But it did make me wonder. But anyway, we're going to be doing a few more of those. I think in the coming weeks because we were chatting about it on a chat, and
Just
I
some
think
fun like fan chat, hang out.
Yeah, and then we'll see how it goes, and it's not going to have in crazy amounts of editing or anything like that. But I think we're going to give it a series name just to kind of keep it, semi-aware for people, just to say, oh, I like this is the format that they're going with for this episode or that episode or whatever. So I think we're going to call it like Cantina Chatter or Cantina Chat.
Something like that, yeah.
Something like that.
You had pitched earlier.
Yeah. So I think we'll do some of those, in the coming weeks, and as we go forward through the summer, and summer is summer. It's like I don't think anyone wants to sit down and plan anything super hardcore or anything until Visions Volume 3 comes out, when we'll do some after show for that, and then nothing really comes out after that again. So for the rest of the year, I think we're gonna see how this goes. We'll just take it slow, take it easy.
Intermittently, we do have some planned stuff, so it's kind of keep an eye on the titles for which ones, if you enjoy specific conversations, if you like this new alternate kind of format, let us know. Yeah,
and if you haven't subscribed to Star Wars Launchpad, definitely go and check that out, because Launchpad has been interesting. It's been sort of an experiment, to be honest, like to see how generative AI can come up with a conversation. And people might roll their, even I do it, like anytime I hear the word, the 2-letter word, I'm like roll my eyes, But it's been fascinating to see the technology advance, and there's no escaping it. So the first 8 episodes more or less are sort of newsworthy type episodes where they've been recapping some sort of articles from StarWars.com or other official sources. But the last 2 episodes, I've kind of tried something different. The 9th episode of Launchpad, I did a deep dive book review of the book that we had a podcast about here on Star Wars Escape Pod, about the reign of the Empire, the Mask of Fear. So we did one here, and then I had the AI one do one as well. So it was kind of interesting to see how their conversation was constructed versus like what the things that we talked about here. So, if anyone's
I can
curious,
see it being a big contrast.
It was just, I don't know, it was just interesting. And, sometimes it does have a very surprising outcome with the things that it can come up with, like things to talk about, because I'm literally giving it the book, to say like, hey, okay, read this book, the entire thing, and then come up with a conversation. So that's what it's doing. And, we're doing the same thing over here, except we're people. So, and then for the Bad Batch grand overview, that was episode 10 that just came out on the 20th of June. That one was like I had a massive like deep research sort of thing for the entire 3-season show of the Bad Batch, and I just plugged that in and just said, come up with a conversation to chat about this show as an overview, and just sort of make a conversation out of the events that happen in this show. So any Bad Batch fans out there might actually really enjoy the deep dive between Clone Wars and A New Hope, focusing on the Bad Batch events, and that was in Launchpad as well. And I think in a year from now, we just also recently talked about this, we'll maybe do another sit down and do a rewatch of the Bad Batch.
Yeah, we've been talking about that.
Yeah, because I think next year it'll be 5 years.
That's crazy.
From when the first season came out.
Yeah.
So, yeah, pretty crazy.
Man, I still feel like Rebels is new.
Yeah, I know, right? It's kind of nuts. All right, so but our focus today is going to be. Actually, first before we get into it, I just noticed our friend Darian has just dropped in. So let's open the blast doors. You want to hit the button over there? Hit the button of the door. Yeah. Okay. There we go. Thank you, Blake.
What did I do?
Yeah, you hit the button to open the door.
Oh, you're welcome.
All right.
Looking around for something.
Yeah. All right, welcome back to the show, Darian.
Thank you very much. Chut, chut.
Chut, chut.
Chut, chut, sir.
We have. Before I wrap up the sort of the news and headlines for the week, I also just wanted to say we had a special guest on a few years ago. Not even a few years ago. It was like, it was maybe like 2 years ago. His name's Jason Eaton. He came on to talk about a model that he'd built for Lucasfilm for specifically for StarWars.com and for their YouTube channel to do a highlight on what was it called?
It's
The big space station.
Like Lights Beacon or something, isn't it?
Yeah. Starlight
That's
Beacon.
Starlight
yeah.
Beacon. Yeah.
The High Republic space station from Phase 1, right? So Jason Eaton, very talented guy. He was recently featured on Adam Savage's Tested YouTube
cool.
channel.
Yeah.
So yeah, he was featured on there for a recreation of the classic Rebel transport ship that he like made from model kits and everything like that. But reference material on how to make this thing is like incredibly scarce. So he had to do a ton of research. And it took him
That's like the big bubble thing with the canisters underneath.
Yes,
Okay,
exactly. Yeah. So much lost detail. Like it has to like, okay, what was in that crevice and what was in this crevice,
Oh,
and that thing
man.
is crazy. So yeah,
There's so much detail on those two.
dude, it took him years. It took him like 2 years to make this thing.
I believe it, man.
So go and
Did he
check
kit
that out.
that shit or 3D print?
It's a combination of two things.
Okay.
Yeah, a combination of modeling plus kits, and you should just like watch the video, listen to him talk about it. It's it always blows me away, people who do this craft, because like
Oh man, so cool.
it's crazy, right? So yeah, go and check that out. He had the Rebel transport. He also did one of his own creations, which is like this Imperial tank thing. He also had another official vehicle, which I'm totally blanking on what it was, but he had like 3 or 4 miniatures that he had, or models that he was featured for, but the main one was the Rebel transport. But definitely go and check that out. Cool. Also, Orbit Key giveaway is over, so congrats again, as we mentioned last week to our winners that did win. For one of the names, sadly, we did have to do a redraw because that person still has not replied. But we're hoping that Orbit Key does end up sending you all tracking info and get that stuff shipped out to you as soon as possible. So that's out of our hands now, and we want to thank everyone for following us on Blue Sky, Twitter, or X, or whatever you want to call it, YouTube. Entering in the giveaway and getting in touch with us. So that's
thank you
really
to
cool.
Orbikey for reaching out to let us spread some cool Star Wars stuff to the fan base.
Dude, absolutely. Yeah. So thank you again to them. All right. So the meat and potatoes today is the state of Star Wars books and just the industry, how it's been for the last 5 years. Mm-hmm. What we're looking at is like a very rich library of very different strategically driven content that we have not seen in a long time, probably since the 90s with the multimedia project and everything like that. And now here we are with the High Republic being probably one of the biggest ones they've ever done.
Oh man, yeah. And the fact that it, I guess barring the Acolyte, was just like exclusively literary.
Yeah, exactly. So, I'll start off with something light here before we dive deep. Darian, what's some of the most impressive Star Wars books you've read in the last 5 years? Ideally, books that have been published in the last 5 years, but if not, then maybe just let us know what year it was published.
I have not enjoyed the last 5 years of books, and I'm trying not to be a downer, but every time I've tried jumping into something that's been written recently, I just have not enjoyed it.
All right.
I mean, that's fair.
Okay, well then what was the last great thing that you read?
Yeah, what's the last one you enjoyed?
He's like, it was
Come back to me.
like 1980. There was this book, it was the Empire Strikes Back novelization. Okay.
I read
90s
that
Thrawn trilogy.
I read that Darth Maul one recently, the one where, and I ended up getting the audiobook where the guy who does Darth Maul in Clone Wars
Oh, Sam Witwer.
narrated the.
That's cool.
Yeah, I couldn't think of his last word.
Wow. So you read
That one was really great.
Was it the what's it called? It was like the one on the cover where he's like in a bunch of chains.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm totally blanking on the title of that.
Is that a new one that's come out very recently?
I think it was like 2012 or something when that came
Oh
out.
wow, okay, no, that's a while back. Was that still under the canon Disney banner then? Or was that just
No,
before?
that was before.
Just
It
before,
was
yeah.
just before the yeah. It was-
Shadowhunter.
Oh, Shadowhunter. Okay, I'm thinking of Lockdown. That's the one by Joe Scriber. Lockdown. You're Shadowhunter. You say?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I just found the cover. So.
Oh yeah, that one was recently republished as a Essential Legends book. This is a really old one. This came out 2001, just a year after 2 years after the Phantom Menace. So that's
Oh
good.
wow,
That's cool.
okay, cool.
Yeah.
And they just republished it within the last few months.
Yeah, they republished it as recently the Disney umbrella, as you know, new books go. They get canonized, right? Like within the canon. Any of the old books that happened before Disney, they're being printed with a gold label called the Essential Legends Collection. Now, there's still.
I thought you used to just say Legends.
The banner officially is Legends, but and some of them do still have the gold Legends banner. But now what they're doing is they've created a new reprint of even those ones, and they're calling them the Essential Legends Collection. And in a way to sell the book again, they've given it third time. They've given it all new artwork on the cover.
Yeah.
So they've been hiring artists to make new covers for these things, and then they're all getting printed with the same unified
Are they
text.
stealing the idea that like they do for comics, so they just release a bunch of different covers?
Yeah, exactly.
So everyone has to buy like 3 versions.
Yeah, that's exactly what they're doing. So they're basically slowly going through the catalog of Legend stuff and like publishing, 3 at a time, and that way, if somebody did want to buy all the old stuff, like they can essentially have this very nice looking.
Yeah, they're going after
shelf.
the OCD people that needed all to look like the same.
Yeah, totally. So anyway, that's. You can buy this one for republished.
Are they at least releasing hardcovers? Like you get another chance to get a hardcover version?
I think these are all
paperback.
No,
that's a shame.
Prints. Yeah.
So that's at least the cool part of it being re-released. You can get the hardcover version.
Yeah, I think it. So I think all of the republishings, the Legends and the Essential Legends, have all had just like paperback reprints, with a few sort of set aside being in like a rare case of being reprinted without that format and that look, and usually it's like a different publisher altogether and stuff like that. So the really special ones, I think. But anyways,
before I realized just now, before we get too deep into it, I should share. When I first pitched the idea of doing an episode on this, it's because I was at a bookstore. I think it was Kohl's.
Oh, yeah.
And I was trying to find the sci-fi section for Star Wars.
Yeah.
And they didn't have a single Star Wars book in the whole store.
Mm-hmm.
And that got me wondering, like, is this just maybe with so much stuff coming out, people just got fatigued or whatever, and there just hasn't. I was wondering if the sales are really down, so like bookstores are pulling back.
Yeah,
that's what got me wondering to pitch this idea in the first place.
Right.
I know that during Phase 2 of the Old Republic or the High Republic, it was the all-time lowest sales of Star Wars books. So I think a lot of stores started panicking.
Interesting.
Yeah. So, in my opinion, at least when it comes to the High Republic stuff, I think it was a really bad idea to do the High Republic in the order that they did, which was Phase 1 being the beginning of at least what we thought was the era.
Yeah.
Phase 2 came around, and it was actually a prequel era to Phase 1. So Phase 1 of the High Republic was, say, like 300 to 400 years before Phantom Menace.
Mm-hmm.
Phase 2 was like 500 to 600 years before Phantom Menace. And then Phase 3 was the conclusion to the story that Phase 1 was telling you.
That is very confusing.
Yeah. So they did it basically in the order of how the Star Wars trilogies were done. And I think it's always very messed up. Like if somebody does that intentionally, like it's like, okay, the movies were not intentionally done to be watched in that order. Like it was, done from like a technology point of view, right? But it's like if you have the ability to tell a story chronologically, please do it, because it never turns out as good. When you tell a story out of order. We also witnessed this with The Acolyte as well. With 2 flashback episodes. Like, just in my own opinion, I think it's always a worse idea to do it like that than
flashback episodes depend on the story. Sometimes you can even do a reveal that way, but I wouldn't do like a whole like that many books and stuff. Trying to do that with such large numbers of things being released is very confusing.
Yeah, and I think they sort of set themselves up for failure of like in doing that. It just made it very confusing to follow the story, especially when you have a multimedia project like the High Republic, which spans across adult novels, young adult novels, and junior novels, as well as comic books. And that's 2 comic book publishers being Marvel and Dark Horse, right? So there's like 5 different avenues, plus a 6th being they made a few audio exclusive stories that were only like just for audiobook listeners.
The one we listened to of that was pretty good though.
Yeah, it was.
Like
yeah.
the Dooku one.
And then the seventh way is also in the Star Wars Insider magazines. They do publish short stories, which one comes out with every single Insider. And ever since the Disney era, those have also been canon, which during the High Republic multimedia project, a lot of those short stories were High Republic short stories. So there's like 7 ways to catch all of this media. And that doesn't include the Acolyte TV show, or Jedi Survivor, the video game, or the Tales from the Galaxy's Edge VR video game that also had a Flash, like sort of segment of the High Republic in there. There's so many ways, to catch this era, and it's just like, okay, please tell it in order.
It was spread out. And the other thing that was cool at the beginning, but it quickly became hard to manage and keep up with, is the fact that these stories did overlap quite a lot.
Yeah, they
And
did.
so if you're not following everything, then you're missing stuff.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. Okay, well, that's so your story inspired. Yeah, you're being in a bookstore, not seeing any Star Wars stuff on the shelf.
I've never been to a bookstore and they didn't have a single Star Wars book.
Same here.
I was
here. So that's a bit of a shocker.
Confused. I kept wandering around the store, like looking different areas, and like go back and like it should be right here,
Right.
the way their system is, and there was nothing.
And you're pretty convinced that it's not because people bought all the stuff.
Well, especially now where everything's online retailers, like stuff in store, you're just gonna have that.
Yeah.
People are buying a lot of.
I mean, I think it has a lot to do with what Darian said. Like the last 5 years have not been stellar, for the Star Wars book field, and that might have a lot to do with it. If we're looking at the 5 years before, and I just want to recap sort of the 5 years before the High Republic stuff,
Yeah,
because
it's a good idea.
that was basically when Disney took off with this whole canonicity of new books coming out. There was a lot less of it in those 5 years, which sort of bridged between Force Awakens and The Rise of Skywalker.
There was still a lot. I know I couldn't keep up.
There was a lot, because there was the comic books, junior novels, young adult, and adult novels, right? Somebody on Goodreads ranked most of them. This isn't all of them, but I would say this is most of like the Del Rey sort of adult stuff. And their top 3. Sorry, I'll do the top 6 picks. The top 6 picks were the first Thrawn Timothy Zahn book, the Ahsoka book, Lost Stars, Master and Apprentice, Bloodline, and Resistance Reborn. I've read all of those except for Master and Apprentice. I started reading that and then I had to put it down for some reason, but it was really good. And then I just forgot to pick it back up, and I still have to reread it.
I thought we both read that.
No,
one.
we didn't. Yeah. Well, if you did, then I didn't finish it. I need to read it. So that's just a taste of kind of the first 6 on that list. And, you can find it by going to Goodreads, and, you can find rankings for these things. But in short, like the worst 2 on this list, 33 and 35. 34 is missing. Okay. Well, 33 and 34 are the 2 Battlefront books.
Oh, man.
Twilight Company. And
that was such
Fire
a
Squad.
slog. I didn't even bother with the second one. That first one was rough.
Yeah.
That was the first Star Wars book that we were trying to review that I think I didn't finish.
Yeah. It was. Darian, did you read anything in those 5 years between 2015 and 2020, or 2014, 2019 kind of thing?
Yeah, I read Aftermath and Infernal Squad, or at least half of Infernal Squad. It wasn't bad, but it didn't grab me either. And I just realized that I read the new Jedi book, Battle Scars Jedi. That one was pretty good.
Oh, okay.
It was weird to have a thirst trap Star Wars book, though.
Yeah.
Was that Luke with his shirt off, or?
Yeah, it was what was it? Marin and Cal, right?
No, it was Marin and the chick that was trying to be a stormtrooper.
Oh, yeah.
She was
right.
Oh,
that
yeah.
race that.
Right. That was all very confusing. I remember not because I'd played the game. I think I played the game before I read that, or maybe vice versa. But anyway, to me, it just didn't really fit the story, at least that I was experiencing in the game. If that makes sense.
Right. Yeah.
I remember.
To be fair, I find most books around games, it always feels like kind of irrelevant.
Yeah. Sorry again, Darian.
It was supposed to bridge the gap between the games, where it was kind of setting you up for the second game. But honestly, I don't think that story, like, even though I enjoyed it, it really didn't need to exist.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. No, and I feel like it didn't do a good enough job bridging the gap to really need to exist as a book. I don't know.
Yeah, I didn't.
No, if anything, when I got into the second game, the book actually confused me more because it was like, oh, so a lot more happened in a lot less time. That would have required like a big swing.
Yeah, like it's almost like the stories, the people building the story over at EA or Respawn or whoever's doing the story didn't exactly communicate with the author who was writing the book.
Probably worried about leaks.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. It was just like
there's issues with that around toys and stuff too. Sometimes toys come out for a movie that the thing is no longer in the movie or the colors are wrong.
Yeah, it's like
they're on secrecy, right? They don't want anything getting out, and then it kind of backfires on secondary things.
Yeah. It's kind of unfortunate, but all right. So we have a huge long list of stuff here, but I'm just gonna read a paragraph of text here, and hopefully it kind of sets us up for the next little segment of our conversation. So we have a whole report generated over the last 5 years of Star Wars books. This report offers a comprehensive inventory of every Star Wars book published since January 1st, 2019, marking a significant era in the franchise's literary evolution. The year 2019 is widely recognized as the inception of the modern canon period in Star Wars publishing, seeing as it is the last 5 years. We're talking about a more recent kind of modern era. Characterized by a more cohesive and strategically organized release schedule across diverse formats. This shift represents a deliberate progression from earlier, more experimental phases of the Disney canon, which was 2014 through 2018, which initially focused on establishing a new narrative foundation. The transition to this modern approach indicates a mature and coordinated publishing strategy, actively building interconnected narratives across various media, including novels, comics, and audio dramas. This integrated approach serves to maximize fan engagement and expand the universe in a structured manner, reflecting a sophisticated understanding of how to cultivate and sustain a vast multimedia franchise. The diversification of product offerings encompassing long-form trilogies and audio productions also demonstrates a conscious effort to cater to different segments of the Star Wars fan base, thereby broadening market appeal and deepening immersion for a wide array of consumer preferences. Now, I'm glad I brought this up because, looking at 2014 through 2018, the Disney canon, I think we talked about this at one point. A lot of the books, other than the Aftermath trilogy and maybe the Alphabet Squadron trilogy, a lot of the books are kind of staple single novels.
They are, yeah. And they were kind of shotgunned all around the timeline as well.
Yeah, and other than random character miniseries that they did through Marvel, and they still do a lot of those, but they were doing more of them. There was really only 2 ongoing series, which was the main Star Wars series that bridged A New Hope to Empire. And then there was the Darth Vader series, which lasted 30-something or 40 issues that bridged A New Hope to Empire as well. And those would overlap. And eventually, coming off of that, we would get the ongoing Dr. Aphra series.
Right,
and
she became a fan favorite.
Yeah, she became a fan favorite, and then from that, we also had smaller kind of things developed around that time period, and then that success kind of graduated to other things. Between episode 5 and 6, they also did some Vader series right after episode 3, and now we're in the post episode 6 era. Literally a new era for the New Republic, as they've been telling. All these ongoing series after this big, huge battle at Endor, leading up to the Battle of Jakku and going onwards.
That's before, okay? Because I know there's the Aftermath trilogy, which takes place over that. I guess it's pretty immediate after Return of the Jedi, but in that era.
I know, and it's kind of weird, me saying this. Basically, in short, they've kind of come full circle.
Yeah, because it's the first book they put out, or close to. First, main one anyway.
One of the first main books that they put out was Aftermath from Chuck Wendig, and now they're really going back to that time period again and telling new stories across the Marvel publishing units, with that time period, right? And kind of approaching that space within Disney Plus that they've crammed all these stories in, like Mandalorian and Skeleton Crew and Ahsoka and all that. So that's what really separates the first 5 years from the modern 5 years, which is mostly, people will remember the last 5 years to be mostly High Republic material, right?
That's crazy that it took 5 years to get that whole series out. Like, that's a long time.
It is.
It's not for that many books, I guess, if you think about it that way. I mean, like, Wheel of Time's over like 30 years, but
oh, for sure.
But
I'll read off another little section here for anyone who might be less familiar with the pre-2014 era. Like, we're talking about the last 5 years specifically, and then the 5 years before that was a brief mention. But anyone who not really familiar with Star Wars books, prior to 2014, like, this is for you. So, a pivotal moment in Star Wars storytelling occurred in 2014 following Disney's acquisition of Lucasfilm in 2012. This decision involved reclassifying all previously published Star Wars literature, with the exception of the films and the Clone Wars TV series, as legends. From 2014 onwards, all new material would contribute to a unified canon directly integrated with the cinematic and television narratives, something that we have debated about time and time again. The period commencing in 2019 represents a mature phase of this canon. The establishment of a continuous canon integrated with all films and TV shows and its subsequent evolution into the modern canon signifies a deliberate architectural choice in narrative construction. This approach ensures consistency and minimizes contradictions, a challenge that frequently arose within the sprawling Legends continuity. Centralized control over the narrative allows for a more synchronized storytelling across various media, providing a coherent universe for audiences to explore. This commitment to narrative consistency directly addresses a common desire among dedicated fans for a cohesive and immersive experience. By coordinating news stories to prevent contradictions, the publishers aim to enhance engagement, encourage fans to delve into different types of media within the same universe, and potentially boosting sales across all literary categories. What do you think about that, Darian? Because I know we've had discussions about, even modern canon stuff and just in general the last 10 years worth of Disney canon being at times very contradictive to the stuff that they end up coming out with on Disney Plus, whether it's a show or even like what you were just saying about a game, like a tie-in novel to a video game, and just the questions that it generates because of the rough translation going between some of these various things. Like, how successful do you think that this effort has been?
I don't think it's been very successful at all, and I think this is where a lot of fans get frustrated with when we reapproach things in live action and cartoons, because fans have a certain expectation, and then Dave Filoni and Favreau are really good at giving us the general broad strokes of the canon we're used to. But every once in a while, there's something where it's like, that's not at all what we've had in our heads for a decade now.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that's always been a problem.
So, like,
with Star Wars, and just kind of like big franchises that then expand themselves. So it's hard to keep up with what people's expectations are.
But I think it's just a little bit more obvious right now because we're hitting it at a much faster speed.
Right. Yeah, you got anything to build on there?
Like, they're creating so much content.
Yes, they were creating a ton of content. I mean, like, it's I mean, in some ways, I guess and I guess maybe some ways to compare it would be to take the last 10 years and compare it to the 10 years before, and just to see, like, the difference of how much got pumped out.
Right. Because 10 years at this point is basically pre-Disney, right? If you go more than 10 years.
Yeah, exactly.
I would say that there's more content in the last 10 years than the 30 years before it.
I think you're probably right, but I know there's a huge push around 99 with Phantom Menace and kind of through the prequels. So I'm not sure. It definitely didn't go for as long as the full 10 years. This last 10 years kind of was like a consistent push and didn't really feel like it ever slowed down. Whereas around the prequel era, there was a huge push, but then it slowed down quite a bit through like the era of the Clone Wars show, was mostly about the show with like some novels, but not nearly as many as Phantom Menace.
I think especially after Revenge of the Sith, there was a bit of a dry 10 years that came after that.
Yeah.
Leading up to
probably close to Force Awakens.
Yeah, leading up to Force Awakens.
The announced Force Awakens.
Yeah, basically. But you know, it's at least when I think of that time period, you know, during when the prequels are coming out, like I have some very fond memories, and I still have my books, but very fond memories of childhood scholastic book series that were coming out, the junior novels, if you will. You know, I've read like a 5 or 6 part Boba Fett, like a young Boba Fett story, which the books weren't that long. Like we're talking like thin paperback,
30-page ones, right?
30 chapter books. 30 pages? No. It was like,
Was it bigger than that?
you know, like maybe like half an inch thick. Like we're maybe like 27
30 chapters with
20 chapters
40
or
size font.
25 chapters. Yeah, like I mean, if somebody was a fast reader, you could get through one in like maybe like, you know, an hour and a half or something, you know, but like
That'd
it
be very
was
fast.
yeah, like they're not huge, they're not massive, right?
Yeah.
Like they're
The junior novel.
they're junior novels, yeah. Like they're fairly quick to get through, but they weren't bad because they were short. They're really good, in fact, and
Yeah.
and they were really good about keeping a narrative that bridged from one book to the next book. So if you put them all together, you'd have a fairly normal size adult novel, perhaps, you know, like in a series. The Jedi Apprentice series started doing this before Phantom Menace, or around the same time that Phantom Menace was coming out. And I think that series lasted like almost 40 books. It was like 30 something, 40 books, something like that. Then they did the Jedi Quest books, 10 books with Obi-Wan and Anakin. And then The Last of the Jedi, which was Ferris Olin and Obi-Wan after episode 3. So like, you know, I have solid memories of all these series that came out, and that was a ton of books if you count each and individual one of them, right? And a lot of Dark Horse comic books came out during that time as well. The Republic series was pretty big at the time. And you know, other stuff. I don't know.
There's some X-Wing series that came out around then too.
Yeah. Dark Horse was big, but now we're kind of back to that, but just in a matter of a story that no one's really familiar with because it only exists in the literature.
I think that I get why they did that because they were kind of testing the waters, I think, but I also feel like that didn't draw a huge interest because of that, if referring to the High Republic stuff.
Yeah.
Because like the big push that made those junior novels you're talking about in the Phantom Menace era so popular is that all these kids had just seen this movie in the theater.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So here's some just general stats for you. This is encompassing resource books. That's like visual dictionaries, stuff like that. Junior novels, young adult novels, audio, like published for audio book, you know, which is only like 6. The young adult novels as well as adult novels, and I think this is also encompassing like maybe comic books, possibly. Anyway. 239 total publications in the last 5 years, 2019 to the present day, the modern canon era. That's how much stuff has been published, you know, since January 2019. 40 plus High Republic titles. That's books, like main books, and that's, you know, to me that's insane. A good infographic is like, at least like showing me that it's actually pretty evenly distributed between, well, majority of it is comics, but a lot of it's evenly distributed between novels and reference books. So there's actually been a lot of like non-story related books that they've done as well, being like, you know, like that book that I have on the shelf over there, like Year by Year, a visual dictionary, or a visual history, or like the Acolyte visual dictionary.
Yeah, I saw that one on Amazon just recently when I was doing research.
Yeah, so like there's definitely been stuff that they've come out with, that Star Wars Publishing has come out with, that's like, how much of this stuff would we have had prior to the Disney era, you know? Like I remember those big visual dictionaries when the movies came out. Do you remember those? Like I can still imagine the episode 3 one in my head with Yoda on the cover, or
I don't know
Grievous
if I
on the
saw
cover.
these.
Yeah, Darian, do you remember the visual dictionaries from DK?
I have one of the smaller ones that wasn't any one movie in particular. It was kind of all 9. So I love them. They're great, but they're not curated super well.
Okay, all right. Well, hopefully the new ones are a bit better, but yeah. Anyway, I just remember those. So we're counting like all that stuff too, but pretty nuts. Let me think here. Novel releases saw a peak in 2019, driven by ties to The Rise of Skywalker. Anytime that a new movie came out, they always also did have a bit of a ramp up with titles that had the Journey to The Force Awakens, or Journey to The Last Jedi, or Journey to The Rise of Skywalker.
like a tie along movie.
Yeah,
Or
like tie-in books, tie-in material of some kind. And
Did they ever do a novel about Broom Boy?
No.
We're never gonna know what happened to that poor Broom Boy.
Yeah. The rise of audio dramas took place within the last 5 years too. The first being in 2019 with Dooku Jedi Lost. That one was fantastic. They had an adaptation of the first 2 volumes, I think, of the Dr. Aphra Marvel series. They did the High Republic Tempest Runner with the Nile villain Lorna D, which expanded out the phase 1 of the High Republic. And then they also did one called the High Republic: The Battle of Jeddah, which was depicted as a pivotal peace conference that descends into chaos. That one was January 2023. So they've done a number of these like audio drama exclusives that have been written to be like a dramatized adventure story that then, when they publish the script, it's just published like a script in a novel form. So it's not actually written to be a novel at all. It's, written to be an audio adventure. But tons of High Republic stuff. So I looked it up on Reddit, and 10 months ago, there was a big thread saying, is Star Wars: The High Republic a success in terms of sales and economic impact? And like Darian said, possibly the second wave being like the most negative, when it comes to sales. And I don't know where the information is confirmed or where we can actually confirm any of that information, but I would believe it, if somebody, like you said, Darian, I think it's, a fairly accurate sort of guesstimation to make, because since that point, we, like you said, you walked into a bookstore, where's all the Star Wars stuff?
It's weird, right? And to tie directly to that, I actually pulled up on Amazon the Light of the Jedi High Republic series, and just looking at the number of reviews, you can just see. So not even like the review itself, because it's pretty consistently about 4.5 stars, but the total number of people who review it. The first one, which was Light of the Jedi, had just shy of 2,000 reviews, and then the next one actually was a step up at 14, and then there's a huge drop off to 3,000. And it just keeps dropping from there.
Do you think
I wouldn't be surprised?
Go for it.
I wouldn't be surprised if the books picked up sales later, but I remember it being on the news that there was 1 or 2 books from that era that during phase 2 were in like hundreds of sales for a month or two. And people were like, are they going to cancel the series because nobody is buying it?
It's pretty crazy. I'm just looking at here when you get farther down, not even that far. So you get to book 6. On Goodreads, there was 222 reviews. On Amazon, there was 69 reviews.
Yeah, it's not a lot at all.
It's not even 100. And that there's several books that come after that.
Is this on Amazon.ca?
That's a good question. I think they converge reviews, though. I don't think it matters. It's pretty consistently around 30 reviews.
So whereas the 2015 Star Wars Tarkin novel, which came out in the first 5 years of the last 10 Disney canon era, has over almost 5,000 reviews. It's got 4,789. So clearly, and then the third Thrawn book from 2024, almost 9,000 ratings. But that's last year. So I wonder, maybe is it just High Republic stuff?
But that is the majority of Star Wars over the last 5 years in the novel area, though.
Yeah, which would explain a large percentage of drop off for books in general.
I mean, they made it hard to it, right? So
they did, yeah.
Because I know if you look at the authors, a lot of the authors that were writing stuff in the kind of Return of the Jedi or even Empire Strikes Back era over 5 years ago, they rehired all of those authors to write the High Republic stuff.
Yeah.
I'm just curious, how many of that the High Republic did each of you guys read?
We read a good chunk of phase 1.
Phase 1, yeah, we read most of it.
Yeah, we haven't read anything in phase 2 or 3, but I did read.
So we fit the graph.
Yeah. I think at least for us. Let me just bring up a list here. Star Wars Phase 1 High Republic. Okay, so we started off with The Light of the Jedi. We did also read the Into the Dark young adult novel. We also read A Test of Courage, which was a junior novel. I personally did read some of the Marvel comics, I think, at least most at the time, leading up to the second Del Rey novel. We did read The Rising Storm, which was the second big novel in that first phase. I read Race to Crash Point Tower, which was a junior novel. I think I can't remember if we read Out of the Shadows.
Yeah, we did.
Did we? Okay.
I think so.
I definitely listened to Tempest Runner, the audio adventure. I don't know about you.
I think I did too.
We did not read Mission to Disaster, but we did read The Fallen Star, which was the third and final book to that trilogy. Midnight Horizon, we skipped that one as well, and then there was the Tales of Light and Life, which was like a bunch of short stories all combined into one book, which we didn't read.
Did we read The Eye of Darkness? Because I recognize the cover.
The comic book series?
No, it's book 4 of the
Eye of Darkness.
adult series. So maybe was that the first book of phase 2?
Book 4? Sorry, is it a blue cover?
Yeah.
Blue label? Blue label is phase 2. Well, black label. Black label is phase 3. So no, we didn't read that.
Oh, that's why you tell.
They separate phase 1, 2, and 3. Phase 1 is gold labels. Phase 2, which is the prequel, is blue. And then phase 3, which is the conclusion of phase 1, is black.
I think they reused that artwork then, because I recognize it.
That's the Markion Rowe.
Yeah.
So he's shown up a lot. So you would have seen him at some point in maybe a comic book or something. So in general, Darren, I feel like between the two of us, we read like the majority,
almost all of phase 1.
Phase 1, yeah.
Okay, so putting aside the attempt at a Tarantino style timeline, what about this series made you peter off reading it? I'm just curious, as I never read any of it because there were some basic concepts to this timeline I didn't want to read.
Okay, I like my short version answer to that is it was just too drawn out. I think they could have avoided publishing so much material across multiple different reader formats. Which was the junior, the young adult, and the adult novels. Like there was just so much stuff, plus the comic books and the audio adventure. And then on top of that, the story towards the middle point, which was the Rising Storm novel, neither of us liked very much.
That one was a bit of a grind, yeah.
That one was a huge grind. Which
the next one was better though. The Falling Star.
Fallen Star was great. Yeah, Fallen Star was good. Rising Storm was rough. So like I think for us it was the fact that the center point, like the middle of that first segment of the story, was just slow and uninteresting. And it
was mostly about politics.
And because it's such a big event that they're trying to convey like to multiple multiple different types of readers, you start to come across a lot of repeat material. So like, for example, towards the middle point of the Rising Storm, this giant galactic fair is happening, and then it gets attacked by pirates and things go wrong and a lot of people die. And if you go to the junior novels or the young adult novels, which are telling different perspectives with different characters, but taking place at the same time during the same event, you just have to essentially read the same story all over again, but with different people doing different things. And even though it's a different story, the actual event, if it doesn't interest you at all, affected everything across the board. And that included the comic books as well. So I feel like it was only towards the end of phase 1 when it got interesting again that it was like, okay, this is going to be a long haul roller coaster. And then when phase 2 hit and it was actually a prequel to phase 1, my interest in reading just the backstory of what already felt like a good...
I didn't know it needed a prequel.
It didn't need a prequel. A lot of the backstory was political backstory as well as just completely unrelated stories about other Jedi 100 or 200 years before in this time period, setting up kind of the modern Republic politics system and this and that, and exploring the Outer Rim and, kind of sending people out. And it was like just unrelated to the story they were telling in phase 1, which is why it made no sense that it was phase 2, right? And, maybe someone who's read Phase 2 can like give me a list of reasons why Phase 2 is relevant, but I felt like just from what I saw, most of it was not. And then
It was like a detour in the middle.
yeah, it was like a detour in the middle. And I think at least for me, that was a huge deterrent to read Phase 2 stuff. And then
I would consider reading some Phase 3 just to see the end of the story.
I think I would too. But the thing is, we've just been so much stuff happened within the last year and a half when Phase 3 was coming out that I feel like neither of us really got around to it. And then on top of that, there's still non-High Republic books that did come out as well that we had an interest in reading.
Yeah.
Including that Battle Scars book that you read, Darian, along with,
we read that one with the Jedi Council.
Yeah, the Living Force,
Yeah,
that came out as well. We also did the Reign of the Empire book more recently. There's been stuff over the last couple.
You did the Inquisitor book?
Yeah, Rise of the Red Blade, the Inquisitor book.
Oh,
yeah,
I like
thank
that
you.
one.
Yeah, that one was interesting. So there's definitely been some stuff that has come out, over the last year, which has not been specifically High Republic material.
I'm curious to just look up if that has a bigger read count just compared to some of this High
Brotherhood,
Republic stuff.
the Obi-Wan Anakin book, Brotherhood, that one was decent.
Look that up first.
There was also that Pride of the Jedi audio book.
Which one? Sorry, say
That
again?
one there was a Pride of the Jedi audio book with Qui-Gon Jinn and Obi-Wan. That one was pretty interesting.
Oh yeah. What was that called again? I forget.
Pride of the Jedi, I think. Oh, hold on.
No, that doesn't ring a bell. I know which one you're talking about though. I just can't.
Padawan's Pride. Padawan's Pride.
Padawan's Pride. Oh, Padawan's Pride. Yeah, I did not read that one.
Brian Q. Miller wrote it.
Okay, yeah. So that's you're right. Yeah, the audible original. That's Obi-Wan and Anakin story between episode 2 and 3, or 1 and 2. Sorry, written by Brian Q. Miller. I still need to listen to this one.
I just interject here. Comparatively, Brotherhood had about 2,300 reviews on Amazon, and then Goodreads had 10,000. So it's kind of back into that original median.
And that was 2022. So that was only
23 actually.
Oh, 2023?
Mm-hmm.
That was only like two and a half years ago.
I think it's almost exactly 2 years actually.
Yeah. Yeah, interesting. Oh, we also did Shadow of the Sith from Adam Christopher. That was that book about Luke and Lando. That had the really weird ending.
Don't tell me anything about that. I just bought that.
Oh, okay.
You'll enjoy the ending.
Let us know about the ending, yeah. We did a full review on that one. So and then there's been a ton of High Republic stuff. So I guess in conclusion, I do have a little bit here that I'll read out because there has been a ton of stuff. Let's just see here. So since January 1st, 2019, Star Wars Publishing has entered a robust, strategically coordinated modern canon era. The sheer volume and diversity of releases across adult, young adult, and junior novels, comics, manga, reference material, all demonstrate a comprehensive approach to expanding the universe. A consistent and a diverse output since 2019, spanning multiple formats and targeting different demographics, indicates that the modern canon has evolved into a self-sustaining narrative ecosystem. It no longer solely relies on film releases to drive literary content, but actively generates new storylines and characters that can be adapted or expanded upon in other media, creating a continuous cycle of content creation and consumption. The focus on initiatives like the High Republic, coupled with ongoing series and multimedia adaptations, underscores a commitment to both deep lore expansion and broad audience engagement. The notable shift towards audio dramas further exemplifies the franchise's adaptability to new consumption formats. This period reflects a mature and confident publishing strategy, ensuring that the Star Wars literary galaxy continues to grow and captivate fans for years to come, with many exciting titles already announced for the future releases. The consistent announcement and release of future titles demonstrates a proactive strategy to ensure the long-term narrative longevity of the Star Wars franchise. By continually building out new eras and exploring different corners of the timeline, the universe is actively being expanded, ensuring a steady stream of new stories and maintaining fan interest well beyond the current film saga. This strategic foresight is crucial for a multi-billion-dollar intellectual property. In that part, I agree. in the part of engaging fans and keeping fan interest beyond the current film sagas, I feel like that's kind of split depending on how you look at things, you know? I don't think the High Republic really kept fan interest at all. And I feel like the show that they did make for that time period turned fans away.
That's actually a good question. I'm wondering, so we look at the amount of number of reviews. At what point did the Acolyte come out?
The Acolyte, well, the phase 3 is just wrapping up now. Like just 2 weeks ago or last week or whatever it was, the final novel came out for phase 3 of the High Republic. But the Acolyte got released. Right? Yeah, it got released sort of between phase two and phase 3 kind of coming out. I think phase 3 had already just started to come out.
Okay, no, because the drop off was during phase 2.
Okay, yeah.
This is before Acolyte even came out.
So drop off was phase 2. Acolyte came out, didn't do any favors. Phase 3 came out. It was a short-lived phase. There was less stuff in phase 3, I think, than in phase 2 and 1. But yeah.
I think it suffered from the problem of they bet on this being a banger. They were probably recorded the season for Acolyte when the first phase was in publishing. And then because of how long it took them to do all the CGI and everything, it ended up coming out at the worst point of sales for the phase 2, right? I think that's kind of what happened. And it sounds like it suffered the same problems the book had.
Yeah, that's really unfortunate timing if that's how it all came about.
It is. Now that we have like a lot of examples though, like the question going forward is we know what they're doing now, at least within the last 5 years, the High Republic has kept Star Wars literature busy with a project.
Yeah.
Because there has been no films in the last 5 years, right? Whereas in the 5 years before,
though, there's been a number of series, which arguably is more content than a movie.
Series, yes, but I wonder if maybe they were too afraid to develop literature for this evolving around those series, specifically at the request of the creatives doing those shows.
Could be, yeah.
Like, because managing stories that happen cross shows, like the way that Book of Boba and Ahsoka and Mandalorian and Skeleton Crew have all been telling that story, that's already a big challenge. So to communicate with authors and stuff,
that's a good point.
To make tie-in content probably was off the table.
I mean, it's kind of it's probably the same reason why all the books that came out just before Force Awakens didn't really have anything to do with Force Awakens.
Yeah, like it was all very teasing, right? Like it wasn't even like you could go into the Force Awakens, and I did, having read every single piece of literature that they came out with, prepping you for the movie. None of it helped.
Yeah.
And that made it even worse. Like when I went to see the movie.
All that effort, yeah.
I was like, dude, like come on, you know, like it just give me something here. Like, I mean, whatever. But I think that's probably one reason for that. So the last 5 years, they've been kept busy with making this era of Star Wars. And I think I love the idea. I love the approach. I love the idea. I love that because there was no big event movie to kind of construct stuff around, that they looked at the last 5 years, or at least they looked forward 5 years and went, okay, let's make a project to develop story within this time period. And I love the approach. I love that they sat down. It's a great idea, right? The execution and the final product, it's a hit or miss depending on what you're reading and what you're looking at. And I feel like, it was very niche as far as bringing in new fans. It was a very niche thing to expect maybe for the fan base to grow based on this content. But no doubt, new fans to Star Wars have still, I'm sure there's people out there, have been brought into the fold by consuming High Republic content and really liking it.
Yeah, I can see that. And they might not even realize that that's a huge time jump before Phantom Menace. They might just think that's around that period.
Yeah, exactly.
If you're a new fan.
Totally. So, it's not all been like a wasted effort or anything. And now actually we have some lore that takes place in that time period, which before, even in the Legends continuity, we didn't really have anything. So, because there's a big gap between KOTOR and the prequels. 100%.
And I do also really want to give them props because they created so many new characters, which is refreshing because sometimes it gets tired when all the novels are kind of about the same characters we've been talking and reading about for the last 40 years.
Oh man. And to build on top of that, they had the way that they did it too. They approached it as if it was going to be a movie. They had concept artists come in, make art for these ideas, like for these Jedi, for these characters that they were making stories for creatures and aliens and things that would show up.
Ships as well.
Yeah, and then they kept it consistent through the comic books and the novels, and that all worked.
That part was all super cool.
Yeah, that all worked really well. I think it was.
I think
maybe,
they had some. I know I've talked about this every time that we've talked about the High Republic, but they had some really solid ideas that I felt like they just kind of fumbled.
Yeah, and
Like specifically Markion Rowe with his like thrash metal pirates, I thought were awesome. Like his Viking pirates, I
Yeah,
thought that
the
was such
Nihil.
a cool concept.
yeah,
And I also really like the base, and that's why like the base idea of the zombie grunge alien.
the Drengir.
Thank you, the Drengir. But then they kind of dropped the ball by making them sentient when they should have just been like almost like the zombie that they did in the Death Trooper novels. That's basically, in my opinion, it would have been more interesting if they had done that.
Definitely, yeah.
But it's a cool concept. Like
It is, and I love how they approached that idea of building out an era with the scale that they did. I feel like there may have been a little too much content delivered at the end of the day, but it was a great concept idea, and their plan and stuff like that was interesting. What would you now that you've kind of like experienced some of the High Republic the last 5 years, like what would you expect for the next 5 years? We have an idea of what kind of stories they want to do. You know, we've got a possible shelved new Jedi Order Rey movie that it's currently supposedly shelved, but they still want to do it. Then there's the Ryan Gosling Starfighter movie, also happening in that time period, in that era, post Rise of Skywalker, you know. And then of course they have some other projects in the works. You know, the Dawn of the Jedi James Mangold movie that's sort of early pre-production stages, trying to figure out the script. They have the New Republic era with Dave Filoni doing Ahsoka season 2 and a movie that takes place in that space, as well as The Mandalorian and Grogu, which could potentially turn into a trilogy. So, like, what would you expect from literature over the next 5 years now that you know what a multimedia project of the High Republic scale is like?
it's kind of tough to put anything to that because like I wouldn't suggest trying to repeat that at least in the near future. I could see maybe trying to do that again in another like decade or so, but I think it'd be good to, like, in my opinion, if I were doing it, I would pull back and just do more one-off novels like they did early on. I think that's probably the safest bet because I know for myself, so I don't want to speak for all fans, but I've been feeling like it's just been too big and too much.
Yeah.
So maybe it's better to slow down and kind of like, you know, get your legs back underneath you again, get your fundamentals, and just do some cool just one-off stories.
All right. Yeah,
And that could be a good way to introduce some new characters that people like in that era, like how we got Dr. Aphra, for example.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Yeah. What about you, Darren? What would you want from literature to shift gears for the next 5 years? Like, what would you expect?
I always kind of wanted to see the clone's life starting in Camino up to the battle of, like, the end of the first occupation of Geonosis. I always enjoy Clone Wars stories, and that's something that really hasn't been covered well yet.
Okay, so you want to see more built out between episode 2 to
1 and 2, wasn't it?
to episode 6 kind of thing?
Yeah, I like that era. My favorite part of that, where I think the storytelling got really good, was just before Phase 2 Clone Armor. That's when they've ironed out all the wrinkles with all the ships and whatnot that they're building, and the GAR is really starting to make way.
Okay, all right. So specifically Clone Wars stuff. You want to see more from Clone Wars?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
And the Mandalorian timeline would be pretty fun. There's some comics in there. Like, I believe they did the Mandalorian as a comic.
Yeah, they did an adaptation of the show.
would be-
Yeah.
What about you?
Now that I've experienced what a modern multimedia story initiative like the High Republic looks like, in my opinion, it was just, we already ran over the reasons why it was good. But in my opinion, it was just a little too much and a little too big.
Yeah.
And I think going forward, when you have multiple stories being developed now for the first time in multiple eras, this is unlike anything we've experienced before, with sequel movies coming out as an episode 7, 8, 9, with the 2 standalone side movies, which one of them did not do as well financially for speculative reasons. So, like, I feel like how they need to approach the next 5 years, especially with literature, they need to be very careful about how they develop that space and like how they market the stories that they're making. So doing one-off novels like what you suggested, I think would be probably to their preference for driving a sale, especially if they do have a movie like Starfighter coming out in a year or so, or 2 years, and Mandalorian and Grogu coming out next year. I think a great idea would be, hey, let's do 1 or 2 novels that can send us into the Mandalorian and Grogu. What kind of stories can we tell now that movie is greenlit, it's been shot, it's being post-produced? Like, what kind of stories are safe to develop that would be good stories that would be relevant to people going into this movie, that we can market this book and send them into that movie with a good story, like that kind of sets them up or whatever. And not in a failed way, like, the pre-Force Awakens stuff.
Yeah, but immediately after that, I thought they did a pretty good job with Catalyst leading into Rogue One.
That was a great book. Yeah, that's a great point. Like Catalyst was awesome. And that came out
super relevant.
It was super relevant. Yeah. And it came out before Rogue One, right? I think.
Yeah, it did. I think so.
Yeah. So like
check that.
See, I want more stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
I'm a sucker for Clone Wars anything. So I'll take Clone Wars any day of the week. But if it has to do with the modern sort of release of new stuff, I think that's how I would like it, is like dial it back, produce less, and sometimes less is more. Maybe instead of 10 books a year across junior adult, young adult, maybe dial back to like maybe two or of each at least, like at the very most, maybe even 1 of each, and just like, I don't know. I know Del Rey likes to put out like 4 a year or something like rough like that, if I'm not mistaken. But maybe dial it back and just put more emphasis behind the story and like the relevance of the book. And then I think furthermore, keep it relevant. I feel like they're just too wishy-washy with like making a new TV show, contradicting something within the canon that they've tried to develop so hard to keep consistent. And no names mentioned as to who's responsible for that, but like I think like that's also an issue they have to watch out for. And the more stuff they pump out, with gargantuan multimedia things, the more stuff that can go wrong with that kind of stuff.
I think I might need to change my response a little bit in regards to just like how much they're putting out, because I did just quickly pull up this is on Wikipedia, just how many books per year. And to be honest, even through the 2000s, like there was a lot of books, but I think the thing was they weren't all connected, so you didn't feel obligated to read all the series. You could just read the ones that you liked, because like if you look at, like, it slowed down a bit around 2006, but like 2004, I think there must be like, there's over 10 books.
Can I see the list?
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah, but 2004. Okay, yeah, but this is we got a junior novelization for the original trilogy. So that one, I feel like we can just discard that. We got the first book of the Republic Commando series that year. We got
best book ever.
That's a good one.
Great book. Jedi Quest: The Final Showdown, that was number 10 in the Jedi Quest series. Boba Fett Pursuit, that was number 6 in the Boba Fett series. Jedi Trial, that was part of the Jedi Quest series. Jedi Quest False Peace, that was part of the Jedi Quest series. So like these are all part of Boba Fett, Jedi Quest, Survive. Like those are all part of junior novel,
like all different ongoing series.
Yeah,
but those aren't. My point was they're not all related to each other in a way that they're sharing.
Exactly. Yeah, they're not all related to each other, but I feel like if you compress those like small books, again, these are all very small books, like
mostly junior
for that whole year, which is really interesting to see. With like 1 adult novel being Hard Contact, 2 adult novels, Yoda Dark Rendezvous, that was a adult novel as well. And maybe like 2 or 3 others, and like there's like 4 adult novels that year. The rest of it's all junior ongoing series stuff.
And that's one of the bigger release years.
Yeah. So
like,
like,
I want to compare that to, I think the biggest one I saw was 2022.
Yeah, compare it with one of the last 5 years, and it's like doubled.
There, 2022.
Yeah, 2022. Okay, yeah. So we got Fallen Star High Republic. That's an adult novel. We've got Brotherhood, that's an adult novel. Shadow of the Sith, that's an adult novel. Princess and the Scoundrel, that's an adult novel. High Republic Convergence, I feel like that was an adult novel. And then we got some young adult novels. And young adult and junior are now kind of, there's like 3 categories instead of just the 2.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
So that, and then that's not even counting all the comic books that are not on this list.
No,
But
that's just novels.
It almost looks like it's doubled. Like just in general, the amount of
The number of
words-
adult novels for sure.
Yeah, is like, it feels like there's just so much more than there used to be.
Yeah, I think that 1 or 2 books per year, to be honest with you.
Yeah,
like that's
totally.
where I'd be comfortable, but I'm not like a huge avid reader. So I think I could see some people wanting 2 or 3.
Yeah,
So maybe 2 is like the good middle ground for like adult novels, and then maybe do another like 2 young adults, and then like the really simple junior ones put out like, honestly, you could probably put out like 6 to 10.
yeah, like 2 adult novels, 2 young adult novels, and then maybe like, you know, keep it light with the juniors and keep them small. Because like some of the junior novels that I've read have been larger than some of the junior novels that I used to read when I was a kid, right?
Yeah, they've gotten like for sure gotten bigger.
Yeah, they've gotten beefier. I guess because like maybe the age that are reading junior novels has increased to an older age. So they've had to like shift it forward a little bit with
Right.
reading
Or
preferences.
or they're paid by the word. I have no idea.
Yeah.
Probably
Anyway.
not.
But yeah, that's at least what I'm hoping for. I hope they kind of look back at the last 5 years and decide to dial it back, and then also combine that with the strategy that they had from the 5 years before that.
Yeah,
And
I
just
thought that
kinda-
was more successful.
It was a bit more successful when they were doing just the independent, like single stories that were also potentially tie-in material, and you know, keeping it light. So you know, let's scale it back a little bit. I think this is probably a good idea.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I know that we did have a possible backup subject for this episode. Did you want to bring that up? I know it was a really short like article.
I mean, to be honest, I read it so long ago, I don't really remember any of the details. So I've been reading it for the first time with you again. If you wanted to go over it,
okay, yeah. Well, I mean, we can transit, we can shift gears here. Okay, well, that closes the door on our Star Wars book chat for today. So let's jet over and hit up this random news article here. All right, so this article is from gamingbible.com. This is something that you put on our list of things to talk about a little while ago.
yeah, I think it was something I just kind of stumbled on. I thought it was kind of neat. So I'm guessing I had some talking points. We'll figure it out when we reread it because I don't remember now. But it seems to be directly related to what I assume is the new canon version of how Anakin came to be, as opposed to the pre-Disney era,
Okay.
which was canonized in the Darth Plagueis novel.
All right, let's
At least was left. I think they heavily implied but didn't outright say it, if I remember
Right.
correctly, which is Plagueis and Palpatine were trying to shift the Force to be on average on the dark side of the spectrum, which is why Yoda often refers to as like it being clouded, right? But the Force,
As it should be.
right? But the Force then, because to counterbalance that, created Anakin,
right.
who
Okay.
was supposed to bring it back into balance. That's why he was the chosen one. So that was the old canon.
Okay. All right. So yeah, do you want to give this a read?
Sure, let's go through, and then feel free to just stop and chat any time along the way. So Star Wars finally reveals Darth Vader's true father, in quotations, after decades, and you probably missed it. The father of Anakin has been a point of debate for Star Wars fans for many years, since the prequel trilogy, in fact. Some believe he was a miraculous virgin birth, while some theorize that he was a product of the Force. However, it seems that Star Wars confirmed one theory back in 2018, and we all simply missed it. A popular theory of the father of Anakin Skywalker is Palpatine, because of course it is. It goes that old Palps sought out Anakin's mother Shmi and manipulated the gestating fetus. Am I get that word right? Sure. This was not only confirmed in 2018, but put into Star Wars canon by writer Charles Soule and artist Giuseppe
Comicoli?
Thank you. Yes. Apologies if I butchered that. Via Darth Vader number 18. During that issue of the comic book, we see Palpatine via the Force projecting, making spell-casting hands around Shmi's pregnant belly. This is via a memory of Vader, and he sees and realizes that he was manipulated into becoming the Chosen One for the dark side of the Force. Just to take a pause here. Does that mean that she was already pregnant, though?
No. So, okay. So, I know what it's talking about because I've read this series. This is part of the Darth Vader Dark Lord of the Sith comic book series. And like you said, this came up in Star Wars Darth Vader issue number 18 of the Dark Lord of the Sith. There's a sort of a visionary kind of thing that happens where you see not a flashback, but like an imaginary depiction of Shmi with Anakin in the womb still, and this artful depiction of Palpatine behind her with his hands in this weird like sort of spell casting like form. And then in Shmi's belly there was like this sort of spirally red or something like that, if I'm remembering correctly. And I remember thinking to myself, like, this is a bit strange because, like,
he had no idea who she was.
Assuming
or
that
Anakin was either until he shows up in Phantom Menace, right?
Yeah, and this is the picture right here, and the caption next to the image, it's unnatural. It's something that he emphasizes in his little monologue to Anakin in Episode 3. So I feel like if anything, it was just a nod of the head, to kind of depict like that this person who has tried to be an influential person, ever since he's basically been brought into the Jedi. I think it was just kind of this weird kind of depiction of that, because like as you can see from the image, Anakin is like a Force ghost person in his own vision looking at Shmi with him in the womb, and then a vision of like Palpatine kind of like behind, almost like possessively, kind of there, ready to,
as like a dark spirit.
Yeah, and then underneath there's another image of him in the womb with that spiral, and it says the Chosen One, right? I think it could be a nod of the head to people who think that, yeah, like it's that moment in the Darth Plagueis Legends novel where Palpatine and Plagueis do that thing, and
right.
the Force
is them artistically trying to show that.
Yeah, and the Force fights back and creates Anakin, the Chosen One, right? So it's maybe in a way artistically trying to convey that moment still happened.
Yeah.
But at least the way that I can also look at it is this person is he's like a creep, like he's ever since Anakin gets the Jedi Order, he's like, oh, we'll watch your career with great interest.
Well,
and he knows that he's the Chosen One because he's heard the whispers, he's heard Qui-Gon's prophecy and his claims that like Anakin's this important guy, this prophesized Chosen One. In the Darth Plagueis book, he hears those same whispers like in that story as well. Like the Plagueis actually talks to Palpatine about it, or he talks to Dooku about it or something, or Dooku tells him or whatever. Like there was some indication that whispers that the Chosen One has arrived.
Right, yeah, because that that book goes at least partway into Phantom Menace.
Yeah, yeah. And another thing to know about like context for this panel here is like these cards of images of this moment aren't like, the script isn't related per panel. Like it's like in one of them it just says unnatural, and it's just like Palpatine doing his thing, and then like the Chosen One beneath it. So I think it's supposed to be very vague. I don't think it's supposed to be painting us the picture that it's confirmed that
Palpatine specifically is creating Anakin.
Yeah. I don't think that's supposed to be the message that's like coming across here. I think it's supposed to be kept a little vague, and maybe at the very most a nod of the head, to maybe the moment in the Darth Plagueis book. That's at least the way that I look at it.
Yep, I think I would agree with that. Let me just finish this article here, see if there's anything else. It's a bit ham-fisted and adds another complex layer to Anakin's history, but it did clear up a plot point of contention that fans have discussed for years. When I first heard about this canon point, I was a little disappointed as it felt rather lazy. Having the Force create Anakin is one thing, as it means the creation was bigger than the galaxy and life. However, always treading back to Palpatine, as we saw in Rise of Skywalker, feels like a cop-out. If you're disappointed too, you could always attempt to ignore the addition to the lore and pretend whatever you want. After all, George Lucas made it vague when Shmi spoke on Anakin's conception with Qui-Gon in The Phantom Menace, saying there was no father. I carried him, I gave birth, I raised him, I can't explain what happened. Otherwise, blame Palpatine. It's what Disney would do.
Yeah, like, I mean, I think in a way, like, to depict it the way it did, it makes it look like Palpatine went out to the middle of friggin' nowhere,
Yeah, just
found a pregnant rando,
that's
did some weird stuff.
but that doesn't explain why she's pregnant in the first place, unless she was just outright lying.
Exactly. So I feel like, you know, sometimes articles like this always get me stirred up a little bit because it's always like, man, you're just reading too much into it. But I don't know. At least that's my opinion. Darren,
I think
do you
I
have
agree
any
with you.
thoughts of that?
I don't really know. I'm going to omit myself on this one.
All righty.
I'll put him down to pro. It was Palpatine.
All right. Yeah. So that's. Thank you for sharing that. That's.
Yeah, it was worth going over. At least now, anyone listening who has seen that comic, you know, maybe this helped add maybe a little
Something.
more.
Yeah. A little more spice.
More detail, or you know, I'll break it down a
insight.
little bit because that I'm glad you pulled up the image because from the comic because it does look a bit odd.
Yeah. Like it's an interesting depiction. You know, it's like it's a weird way to convey an unspoken message of some kind. You know, and it's like there's definitely no wrong way to look at it, but it's like, you know, I think like whenever I look at anything like that revisits the George Lucas 6-part saga, I just always think first and foremost, like, what's the story that George told, you know, and then secondary to that comes everything else. So, you know, it's like, I just hate it whenever there's a story that goes back and tries to rewrite what we already know and like what we've already seen. And, you know, George
Alter it, yeah.
Yeah, or alter it. And George has always said, like, Anakin is the chosen one. You know, he's on video speaking those words. And so when they did episode 9 and they made Rey a second chosen one, I was like, what is this? What is this ad?
Was that confirmed?
Yeah, it is. But I was
Where?
like, what in the movie? But I was like, what does this
words.
add? You know,
Yeah.
like it just doesn't add anything of value to the original 6 movies that already told that story. And I think a lot of people have that issue, you know, with that. You know,
Does that mean there's always an avatar of the Force?
I mean, if there is, it's like apparently it happens every 30 years. So, you know, like
Well, it could be like the Avatar Airbender show, where it's like as soon as they die, like another one is born.
maybe, you know, but that would be a very short lifespan potentially because, you know, if they're all human all the time.
Right.
Right.
The other races just never get a shot.
Yeah, exactly. So, you know, it's like who's the chosen one during the High Republic? I don't know. So yeah, I don't know. It's,
Broom boy.
Yeah. Broom boy. All right. Well, that wraps things up for this week. You got any last minute things to throw out there?
Well, let me go back to the novel thing. I'll throw out one last question for us to close off with then. Do you feel we should continue to make everything forced to be canon, or do you think that starts to make things a little bit bland? Because during the High Republic, specifically, that big push with all those authors trying to work together, I felt like it really constricted how creative they could be, and that negatively affected how interesting the books were.
I mean, there are always going to be downsides to it. But I still prefer that initiative of keeping a consistent canonicity as much as possible, because it's a lore, it's a mythology that they're ultimately trying to build and continue building, you know, from the mythology that George Lucas began. And the mentality that goes into that is keeping things consistent,
Right.
you know, and Visions is a cool idea,
Right. Yeah.
but I don't think it's necessarily the way to just make any Star Wars story whatever they want it to be. You know, I think like there is going to inevitably be things that we don't like and like based on the continuity restrictions, but I think it's still the way to do it.
Fair enough. Darian, do you have an answer to that?
I'm not a particular fan of Visions, but I love the concept. It's great to have people play in the universe and push at ideas that aren't going to work necessarily, because you never know how it's going to influence the rest of the universe. And even if you don't like it, it might be exactly what somebody else wants.
Yeah.
So, try and enjoy it. If you can't, please don't crap on it. Just, hey, I didn't enjoy it, and you and you're married.
Yeah, that's well said. Yeah.
No, true. I guess I bring that up because I just feel like we haven't got a lot of really interesting new characters, like from the George era when writers were given more license. Characters like Mara Jade or the Commandos, right?
Yeah.
Or
Savage Opress.
Yeah, Savage. Wait, was he from the comics or narrative first? I thought he started in the show.
Clone Wars.
Okay.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. Who's the other character? I was gonna throw
No,
something.
he's my favorite.
Dash Rendar,
Yeah.
right? There's a lot of.
I was waiting for that one.
Oh, I was gonna say Star Killer, like the original Star Killer, which is
Yeah.
something that doesn't make any sense in canon, but it's cool
Yeah.
and it was fun. Where we don't really get anything like that anymore
Right. Right.
because it has to fit in this perfect box.
I feel like, so yeah, yes, that is true. But on the other hand, we do have the Jedi games with Cal Kestis, and those have both been great.
Yeah.
Like,
No, I agree with
Yeah.
that. But there's been so few things that check that box,
yes.
at least in my opinion.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
What I really want to see is Iden Versio that doesn't go to the rebellion.
Like a what if series.
Yeah, Darian's an Empire man.
Ah,
Yeah.
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 Makes sense. Anyway,
Yeah.
that's me just spitballing if maybe the George Lucas canon system was better.
Yeah.
The G canon.
Yeah, and I think it's always going to be a point of debate where, it's like how effective is trying to keep this as, continuous as possible. And,
Yeah.
but I think it is still the way to go. I think they just need to do better
Right.
at maintaining that idea going into the shows and the movies. They have to look backwards at the literature rather than just thinking that platform is the ultimate way to, retell a story that might have already been told. And, we even saw it recently with Andor and the one-shot Marvel comic, like Tony Gilroy was like, yeah, I'm not sticking to that story. Like,
Oh, right.
and it's like, okay, on the one hand, I see where you're coming from. On the other hand, it's like, there's a canon to stick to, right? And it's the principle that matters rather than this really bad one-shot Marvel comic, yet it still exists. So what do we do about it, right?
Yeah, but that's also part of my point, though, is we're already slowly going that direction anyway, so might as well get good stories out of it at least.
Yeah.
Yeah, because last point. Even to like Timothy Zahn, my favorite Star Wars author, his stuff in the Disney era, none of it has been nearly as good as pre-Disney era, in my opinion.
Yeah. It's partially, it's definitely true. I mean,
Yeah.
the Heir to the Empire trilogy is still king.
Yeah, so many. Allegiance was good too. I really like that. And what's the dude? Another one I really liked a lot.
Shadows of the Empire.
That is the Thrawn trilogy.
All right, guys. Thank you so much for joining this week. We will catch you in the next one. May the Force be with you.